Time remembers its heroes in song, but it whispers of its monsters in fear. Welcome to History's Monsters. In the heart of the Roman Empire, where marble palaces touched the heavens and blood fed the sand of the Colosseum, a child was born from power itself. Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, known to history as Caligula. His name would echo not as a ruler, but as a curse whispered through time. The empire was his cradle, the legions his lullaby. Son of Germanicus, Rome's beloved hero, and Agrippina the Elder, fierce with ambition. From birth, Caligula's life was shadowed by death, poisoned bloodlines, exiles, and betrayal. Rome watched the child of destiny grow among corpses and crowns. When Tiberius ruled, Rome rotted beneath the weight of paranoia. Caligula survived, quiet, observant, masking his hatred behind a smile. They thought him harmless. But the years beside Tiberius on the island of Capri would twist something deep within his soul. And then, like thunder breaking the silence, Tiberius dies. Caligula ascends. The Senate hails him as savior, the people as a god reborn. Rome celebrates the dawn of a new golden age. But in truth, it was the birth of an age of terror. History remembers him as a madman, a god in flesh who demanded worship, a tyrant who laughed at agony. Yet behind the madness lies a deeper question. Was Caligula born a monster, or did Rome create him? This is the story of the emperor who turned empire into nightmare. The Julio-Claudian dynasty ruled not by virtue, but by blood. Caligula's lineage was soaked in both glory and paranoia, descended from Augustus, Rome's first emperor, and born into a family that wielded power like a blade. To be of Caesar's blood was both a blessing and a curse. His father, Germanicus, was a hero, adored by the legions and worshipped by the people. But admiration breeds envy, and in Rome, envy breeds death. When Germanicus died mysteriously in Syria, whispers spoke of poison and imperial jealousy. The empire's golden heir was gone, and his young son watched his world collapse. Agrippina the Elder, fierce and proud, defied Emperor Tiberius himself. She accused him of murder, of treachery, of cowardice. Rome adored her courage, but Tiberius never forgave her. Her defiance would damn her entire family. One by one, Caligula's brothers and cousins fell, executed, exiled, erased. The empire that promised protection devoured its own children. In palaces of gold, the walls whispered with betrayal. To the people, the child Gaius was innocent. Caligula, they called him, the little boots, after the tiny soldier's sandals he wore in his father's camps. But behind the nickname lay tragedy. The empire's darling was growing amidst corpses. Rome believed destiny ran in the veins of Caesar's kin, but blood that rules can also rot. From the moment of his father's death, Caligula learned that power was survival, and survival required cruelty. Under Tiberius's reign, Caligula became both hostage and heir. Sent to live under the emperor's watchful eye, he learned to hide behind smiles, to mask fear with charm. The boy who once adored the legions became the shadow of Rome's suspicion. Even as a child, Caligula understood the poison of power. The closer one stood to the throne, the closer one stood to death. His innocence eroded, replaced by calculation. Rome was teaching its future emperor how to hate. When Agrippina was exiled and later died of starvation, the final warmth in his world vanished. Orphaned, isolated, and watched by spies, Caligula's heart hardened. Rome had killed everything he loved, and in doing so, created what it feared most. The blood of the Caesars flowed within him, but it was now tainted by vengeance. In the shadows of empire, a monster was quietly forming, molded not by birthright alone, but by the cruelty of Rome itself. When Emperor Tiberius died in 37 AD, Rome exhaled in relief. Years of terror and purges had drained the empire's soul, but the death of one tyrant was not the end. It was merely the changing of masks. Caligula, the grandson of Augustus, was about to inherit a throne drenched in blood. The Senate rejoiced, calling him our new dawn. The people wept with joy. After years of fear, Rome longed for hope, and in the young Caligula, they saw the ghost of Germanicus reborn. His first words as emperor promised restoration, justice, mercy. For a fleeting moment, the dream seemed real. Caligula freed political prisoners, ended Tiberius's treason trials, restored honor to the Senate. Gold poured from the treasury into games and feasts. Rome glittered with laughter again, unaware that the laughter would soon curdle into screams. He became a living spectacle, young, handsome, radiant. His voice carried like honey, his gestures rehearsed like an actor's. But beneath the charm was calculation. Caligula had learned from Tiberius that Rome obeyed not virtue, but spectacle. He played the role of benevolent godling, granting gifts to the poor, inviting commoners to dine with him. The city adored him. Statues of Caligula rose across the empire before his reign was even a year old. But every empire feeds on illusion. Behind the grand feasts and generous decrees, Caligula began to study those around him, senators, generals, priests. Every smile was measured, every alliance tested. The boy emperor was learning the art of fear. In the halls of power, he found only deceit. Senators who praised his name whispered against him in corridors. Courtiers smiled with daggers in their hands. To rule Rome was to live in a theater of masks, and Caligula was its rising actor. He soon began to enjoy the performance, the way the Senate groveled, the way the people cheered. The applause fed something deep inside him, something darker than ambition. The emperor was beginning to taste godhood. Yet beneath the adoration, a sickness stirred. Late at night, he dreamt of Tiberius's corpse calling his name. He saw faces of the dead, his mother, his brothers, accusing him. The empire that crowned him was already corrupting his mind. By the year's end, Rome's golden boy was vanishing. In his place, something colder emerged, the smile now twisted, the laughter hollow. The emperor who once promised mercy was beginning to remember Rome's cruelty and to return it. In the autumn of 37 AD, a shadow fell over the empire. Caligula fell gravely ill, struck by fever, delirium, and convulsions. Rome prayed for his recovery, fearing that the gods might claim another Caesar. For weeks, the city held its breath. When he awoke, the people rejoiced. Bells rang, sacrifices burned, and Rome celebrated what seemed like a miracle. But the man who rose from that bed was not the same. Caligula had seen death, and perhaps something beyond it. The joy faded quickly. His first act was to demand divine honors for himself. He ordered temples to be built in his name, priests appointed to serve him, and sacrifices made to his image. Rome had not regained its emperor, it had birthed a god. Soon after, the executions began. Men who had prayed for his recovery were accused of rejoicing at his illness. Senators who hesitated to praise his divinity vanished. The air in Rome thickened with fear. The illness had broken something in him, or perhaps revealed what was always there. He began laughing at funerals, mocking the dead, and ordering executions as entertainment. Madness was no longer whispered, it sat on the throne. He declared himself the reincarnation of Jupiter and Apollo, wearing golden armor and sunray crowns. He dressed in the robes of gods and demanded that his image replace theirs in temples across the empire. He even invited the moon goddess Diana to his bed, a symbol, he said, of divine union. For Caligula, boundaries between man and God no longer existed. He believed himself immortal. Rome trembled beneath his illusions. His cruelty deepened. He executed nobles for their wealth, seized estates, and fed prisoners to wild beasts. The emperor who once promised peace now filled the arenas with blood. In the glow of the torches, Rome's divine emperor was no longer human. The fever had burned away mercy, leaving only delusion. Caligula, the child of empire, had become its living nightmare. Caligula's illness had passed, but the fever of his mind only deepened. He now proclaimed himself divine, not emperor by birthright, but God by nature. The line between mortal and immortal dissolved beneath the shadow of his crown. He ordered a temple built in his honor, beside the shrine of Jupiter himself. There, sacrifices were made, not to Rome's ancient gods, but to Caligula. Every prayer uttered in fear. Every offering a bribe for survival. Statues of him replaced those of the gods. The likeness of Caligula stood in the temples of Apollo, Mars, and Mercury, his face carved into marble that once bore divine forms. Rome was no longer worshiping Olympus. It was worshiping madness. He demanded the heads of Greek statues be removed and replaced with his own. The beauty of centuries defiled by vanity. Caligula believed he had surpassed the gods, that their power now served his will. He entered temples dressed in gold and purple, barefoot as a god among mortals. Citizens were forced to prostrate themselves as he passed or face execution. Rome's emperor had become its deity and its tormentor. At night, he staged divine banquets, inviting nobles to dine with him as fellow gods. He spoke to statues, toasted invisible deities, and demanded worship from those seated beside him. None dared refuse. He even mocked Jupiter himself. "Strike me dead if you can," he declared beneath a thunderstorm. When lightning struck nearby, he laughed and built a new shrine. To himself, the god who defied the sky. His divine obsession turned grotesque. He slept with his sisters, claiming it was the union of gods. He sacrificed animals, and sometimes men, in the name of his holiness. The palace reeked of blood and incense. Even Rome's sacred boundaries fell. He crossed the Bay of Baiae on a bridge of ships, riding a white stallion and wearing Alexander the Great's breastplate, declaring himself conqueror of gods and men alike. And when he reached the shore, he gathered seashells, calling them the spoils of Neptune. To the empire that once ruled the world, this madness was no longer shocking. It was law. The living god of Rome had remade reality in his image. The palace of Caligula no longer served the empire. It served his appetite. Marble halls echoed with laughter, screams, and music as Rome's ruler turned sin into spectacle. He filled his court with the beautiful and the damned, courtesans, gladiators, slaves, and senators' wives. All were his playthings, summoned at a whim to indulge his every depravity. He would dine while executions unfolded before him. Prisoners butchered for his amusement, their blood spilling across the marble as guests were forced to applaud. Pleasure and pain were now his entertainments. The emperor's cruelty spared no one. Nobles were stripped, humiliated, and forced to crawl like beasts. Even those who once advised him became victims of his whims. He married and discarded women like jewelry, including his own sister, Drusilla. When she died, he demanded Rome mourn as though a goddess had fallen. In her absence, his obsessions deepened. He stalked the palace at night, demanding new pleasures, new cruelties, as if torment itself had become divine ritual. He turned the palace into a brothel, forcing wives of senators to serve as courtesans. Behind veiled rooms, moans and sobs mingled beneath the rhythm of drums and laughter. Wealth became his weapon. He seized fortunes, auctioned public offices, and mocked those who begged for mercy. In Caligula's Rome, corruption was not shameful, it was sacred. He once invited guests to a feast, only to command their execution mid-banquet, smiling as their throats were cut, whispering, "Now you die as gods do," surrounded by luxury. By now, the palace had become an altar of blood and excess. Rome's heart beat within these walls, corrupted, enslaved, and entertained by madness. The empire's soul was dying, and it did not yet know it. The laughter faded from the palace. Caligula's pleasure turned to suspicion. Every shadow seemed to whisper treason. Those who once fed his vanity now trembled before his gaze. He believed conspiracies surrounded him. Senators, soldiers, even servants, all were enemies in disguise. His paranoia became Rome's new law. Secret trials replaced justice. Whispered accusations led to sudden executions. The Senate chamber reeked of fear as men pledged loyalty with shaking hands. Caligula's own family was not spared. He ordered the deaths of cousins, friends, and even allies, claiming divine visions told him of their betrayal. To mock the Senate, he appointed his horse, Incitatus, as priest and nearly as consul, proof that Rome itself was a joke in his eyes. His cruelty grew more creative. He would summon nobles for banquets, then order them killed mid-feast, their blood soaking into the marble beside spilled wine. He patrolled the palace at night, barefoot and sleepless, whispering to statues of gods, demanding to know who plotted against him. The emperor was now his own tormentor. Those who once adored him now hid in silence. Informants thrived. One word of dissent could end a life. Even laughter became a risk. His fear poisoned the empire. Blood ran through the streets of Rome as heads of noblemen were displayed at the gates, warnings carved in flesh. In the heart of the palace, Caligula sat alone, surrounded by gold and ghosts. His crown glimmered under torchlight, but behind his eyes, Rome's god had already gone mad. The terror that once silenced Rome began to stir rebellion. Whispers of assassinations spread through marble corridors, whispers too quiet for even Caligula to hear. The Praetorian Guard, once his loyal shield, now plotted his end. They had seen enough. Rome's god had become a plague consuming its own heart. Even the Senate, once humiliated, conspired in silence. They knew Caligula's downfall was the empire's salvation. Rome's monster had to die. Caligula, unaware, prepared for another grand spectacle. a theater performance where he would appear as a living god. Fate had written his final act. As the crowd chanted his name, the conspirators moved through the corridors. Their hands clutched daggers hidden beneath their robes, hearts pounding like drums of war. Caligula stepped behind the stage curtain, smiling, radiant, divine, and there, beneath the torchlight, his gods abandoned him. Steel met flesh. The assassins struck again and again, their blades silencing the laughter that had haunted Rome. His cries echoed through the palace like the death of an empire. His wife and child were slaughtered moments later. No trace of his line remained, only blood where gods had walked. Rome's vengeance was absolute. When the body was found, the divine emperor lay broken, his face pale, eyes open to nothing. The throne of a god was empty once more. Rome exhaled. The nightmare was over. Yet in the silence that followed, one truth remained. The monster was dead, but the madness of power lived on. The body of Caligula was dragged from the palace, once a god, now carrion. His killers dumped him in a shallow grave, unworthy of royal rights. Rome watched in silence. The Senate rejoiced, declaring the tyrant's name cursed for eternity. His statues were torn down, his image erased from coin and temple. Yet Rome could not destroy memory. The people whispered of his madness, of orgies and executions, of a god who feasted on blood. The myth was stronger than death. The empire staggered, its spirit poisoned by fear. For years, men spoke softly in the Senate, afraid that another god might rise among them. Claudius, Caligula's uncle, was discovered hiding in the palace, trembling behind a curtain. The soldiers crowned him emperor, desperate for order in the chaos. But even as a new emperor ruled, the ghost of the old one lingered. The palace walls still whispered with echoes of laughter and screams. Rome had seen the face of divine power unmasked. It was not godly, but monstrous. Caligula had shown them what worship without conscience could become. Some called him mad. Others said he was Rome's reflection, the empire itself given human form, cruel, decadent, and insatiable. His memory became forbidden, yet every tyrant who followed would carry a fragment of his soul. Caligula was dead, but his sickness lived on in the empire. Rome tried to forget, but history does not forgive. In the ruins of the empire, the name Caligula endures, a reminder that even gods can go mad. History remembers him as a madman, a god in flesh who demanded worship, a tyrant who laughed at agony. Yet behind the madness lies a deeper question. Was Caligula born a monster, or did Rome create him? For every cruelty he inflicted, Rome had first taught him how. Power was his inheritance, fear his education, and excess his only truth. The empire built its god, then watched him burn it all to ash. His reign ended, but his reflection lingered in Nero, in Domitian, in every ruler who mistook divinity for dominion. Caligula became not a man of history, but a warning carved into it. Power without restraint, faith without mercy. These were his gifts to the world. Through him, we see that empires do not rot from the edges, but from the hearts that worship power. Caligula's name is a curse and a mirror. His story endures because it belongs to us all, a testament to the monsters we create when humanity bows to madness.